In 1875, San Francisco, California, there was a law that outlawed the smoking of opium. This was directed towards the Chinese because they frequently smoked opium, but it was believed that Chinese men were luring white women to have sex in opium dens. In 1909, the Opium Exclusion Act was passed, the first drug prohibition law. This drug prohibition law only applied to the type of opium that the Chinese used for smoking, despite the fact that white Americans owned medicinal medicine opium, opium tincture for injecting, etc. Soon, the importation of smokable opium was banned, thus creating the first illegal drug, since one could now get arrested for simple possession. This was the start of drug crime and drug prohibition in the United States.
Cannabis was discovered in America dating back to the 1600s, since it was used in the 17th century for production and in the 19th century as an ingredient in many medicinal products. In 1910, Mexicans coming into America were the first to use cannabis recreationally, and even the first to call cannabis marijuana. Americans soon started to believe that the drug represented Mexicans, and there were soon terrible crimes associated with marijuana. Marijuana was soon thought of as the drug that makes people of color do disruptive things, such as become violent and seek sex with white women. The same Americans so against the usage of marijuana didn't realize that the same drug was used in everyday products and medicine in their very homes. Soon, anti marijuana laws began to be passed in several states. Resembling anti opium laws, this was yet another excuse to discriminate against a particular ethnic group.
As we saw in the film 13th, cocaine was also another drug that had anti laws geared towards an ethnic group, African Americans. Cocaine was first present in Coca Cola drinks in 1886, but was taken out of Coca Cola because it was believed that when black males drank it, they raped white women. In 1914, the Harrison Tax Act made cocaine illegal, but in 1986, Reagan passed the Anti Drug Abuse Act, which differentiated crack from cocaine. As we watched in 13th, crack was more common in black communities, while cocaine was more common in white communities. Crack was more inexpensive, while cocaine was more expensive. One could get a longer sentence for being caught with crack over cocaine, even though they had the same chemical substance, even though they were the same chemical substance.
Drugs have been seen as youthful rebellion among white people and has been taken lightly since 1960s. At the Woodstock concert, it was filled with sex, drugs, and music. This festival was a way for people to take a break from social norms and live a peaceful life. This introduced hippie culture and how they wanted to fight the establishment all while being happy. Unfortunately, the perception behind drug usage with people of color was not the same for white people. Nixon was the first president to kickstart war on drugs. A Nixon aide named John Ehrlichman, you want to know what this was really all about. The Nixon campaign in 1968 and the Nixon White House after that had two enemies, the anti war left and black people. You understand what I'm saying? We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. We could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did. This showed the true intentions behind Nixon's campaign and why he refused to decriminalize drug laws. Ronald Reagan continued on Nixon's vision with incredible mass incarceration rates. Nonviolent drug law offenses increased from 50,000 to 400,000 from 1980 to 1997. As we saw in the 13th, Reagan heavily pushed the war on drugs as a way to get people of color into prisons.
According to the documentary 13, 1 in 3 black men can expect to be incarcerated in their lifetime. A Hispanic male has a 1 in 6 chance of being incarcerated, all while a white male has a 1 in 23rd chance of being incarcerated in his lifetime. Also, people of color make up only, I mean, yeah, make up only 30% of this nation's population. They also make up 60% of the imprisoned population. As for women, black women are 3 times more likely to be incarcerated than white women. However, Hispanic women are 69% more likely than white women. If that's not bogus enough, black offenders receive sentences 10% longer than white offenders for the same crime. Because of the war on drugs, there are more people in prison for drugs than any other crime. With that in mind, there is not any likelihood of people of color selling or using illegal drugs more than white people, but they do have higher rates of arrest. From 1980 to 2007, 1 in 3 drug offenders were black. With today's youth, both black and Hispanic students make up more than 70% of young adults involved in negative school-related law enforcement. Making up the confined youth today, we have 2/5 being African American, 1/5 being Hispanic. African American juvie youth are 16% of the youth population, and 58% of African American youth get sent to be trialed as an adult.
The Reagan Just Say No campaign had little effect on the drug use of teenagers. Just Say No was vague and failed to educate children on the harmful effects of each drug. After the presidency, the number of regular drug users in a graduating class of seniors had dropped 47% from 8 years prior, the start of the Reagan presidency. As time passes, however, drug use amongst teens becomes more regular than ever, with only 32% of a high school convinced of marijuana as a harmful substance. Studies showed that teens subjected to campaigns such as DARE and Just Say No are just as likely to touch drugs as teens who get no type of attention from the anti drug messages.